Mr. de Vallo is the architect of the current austerity measures, which have angered Argentinians and met fierce resistance from the opposition in Parliament.
Yet another angry demonstration in Buenos Aires to protest against the government's austerity measures. But even some demonstrators are beginning to suspect there aren't many alternatives. The country is almost bankrupt. It's not just the population at large that's being hit. Business is also suffering under the uncertainty. But many foreign companies, including German ones, have been in Argentina for decades. They've already survived several financial crises and are taking things more calmly.
Those companies that have a strong presence in the export market are definitely benefiting. Argentina is very competitive in all factors of production except the one vital, which is cost of capital.
The cost of capital. That means high interest rates, something that's hitting Argentinians badly as well. Unable to pay their debts, many are forced to sell up their apartments. Financial reserves are drying up throughout the economy. Many small and medium-sized businesses are going to the wall. But the global players are in a better position to handle the crisis, especially the Germans.
We're adapting by accommodating the fall in demand by constantly adjusting our fixed costs downwards, unfortunately shedding some jobs along the way. But in areas where we're competing with local companies, we're expanding rapidly.
This year, bank balance sheets will also include the depressed value of their Argentinian government bonds. That will hurt them, but economists say the Argentinian crisis isn't a serious threat to the world economy.
Now, that party has been totally discredited, as has his own. So there really isn't much leeway or too much reason for great optimism right now. Charles?
Lucia, and it sounds very much as if we're still in the dark as to who will actually have the reins of economic power, who will step in now in terms of replacing the economy minister, Domingo Cavallo, whose resignation, of course, was accepted by the president.
Well, President Rarua did not specify who will replace Domingo Cavallo, but it's believed that the negotiations are underway right at this very moment with the opposition to agree on some sort of a suitable replacement. He also, the president in his speech, said that whatever new policies would be taken in agreement. So this is going to be a negotiated replacement. And in the meantime, he announced that the presidential chief of staff, Cristian Colombo, will in effect be overseeing the running of the main areas of the economy, Charles. But this is an interim thing.
Lucia, thank you very much indeed. Lucia Newman reporting live there from Buenos Aires. Well, just staying with the crisis in Argentina and focusing now on its impact on the other side of the Atlantic. The main IBEX 35 index fell around 1% in Madrid, Spain this Thursday. Spanish stocks with a presence in Argentina weighed on the market. Leading bank, Banco Santander Central Hispano, falling nearly 3%. Banco Bilbao Vizcaya Argentaria, meanwhile, giving up around 1.5%. Oil company Repsol YPF down more than 2%. And the telecoms giant Telefonica also ending the day on the downside. Well, just a short time ago, CNN's Madrid bureau chief, Al Goodman, spoke to the Spanish finance minister, Rodrigo Rato. He asked him how exposed Spanish companies are to Argentina.
They are multinational companies, so they're exposed to Argentina, but they have interests all over Latin America, and they have interests in Europe and in other parts of the world. So, and they have already made important accounting provisions for any risk. So in that respect, the analysis we have made from the government in the situation of Spanish companies is clear that they are strong enough to, move in this situation.
In the long term, the solution for Argentina, and what is Spain's role in that solution, given that Spanish companies are such big investors in Argentina?
Argentina needs a policy that will allow it to grow, and given the fact that Argentina is a very rich country in natural resources and has a very well-educated population, I think that those are pluses for that strategy. Spain.
Charles, while some individual companies may be hurt with fallout from Argentina, the overall market, according to experts, will likely weather the storm pretty well. The situation there, not a big surprise, and much of it had been factored into most markets, especially since the Argentine crisis has been underway for some time before this escalation of violence. And in fact, U.S. investors today are focusing more on President Bush's economic stimulus package and corporate earnings news. The news on both of those fronts not overwhelmingly positive today. Dow Jones Industrial Average down 0.5%, in danger of snapping a four-session winning streak. Microsoft is a big loser. It's off 3.5%. More warnings from the tech sector, keeping the Nasdaq solidly lower. The index now down 2.5%. It's dragged lower by that Juniper warning you mentioned earlier. Shares of the networking company tumbling 16%. The biggest merger of the year is also grabbing Wall Street's attention.
Demonstrators have called for the resignation of President Fernando de la Rúa. Speaking just an hour ago, Mr. de la Rúa invited the opposition Peronist Party to join in a government of national unity.
I am here because it is I, as President of the nation, who may call on this unity. I've offered, therefore, to Justicialismo, who won in the elections of October 14th and holds a majority in both chambers, to participate in a government of national unity.
Meanwhile, on Argentinian streets, clashes and riots have so far left at least 6 people dead and scores injured. Earlier, we spoke with Lucia Newman in Buenos Aires.
Well, indeed, if the declaration of a state of siege in this country was supposed to establish law and order, it clearly is not working. I'm speaking to you from the Plaza San Martin, which directly faces the presidential palace. Behind me, you can still see quite a large group of protesters. But just over an hour ago, there were hundreds and hundreds of them. Police came in on horseback, hit the protesters with rubber batons, fired tear gas, water cannon, everything they can to disperse the crowd, which just won't leave. All around this area, in fact, there are hundreds of protesters still. Police getting more and more violent with the protesters to try to get them out of here. But people are furious. They are calling for the resignation of the president and, of course, of his economic minister, Domingo Cavallo. Now, as the discontent in this country spreads, and there have been tens of thousands of Argentines protesting out on the streets all over the country in the last 24 hours, it's no longer a question now as to whether Economy Minister Domingo Cavallo will resign, but rather who will replace him and how soon. Now, a sign of his demise is that this morning a judge who is investigating the case of arms trafficking during the previous government of President Carlos Menem, in which Mr. Cavallo was also the economy minister, declared that Mr. Cavallo can no longer leave Argentina while he too is under investigation. As for the looting, the massive looting and food rioting that took place overnight and all throughout yesterday, we understand that that has subsided somewhat, with millions of Argentines now waiting impatiently for the food distribution plan that the government has promised them. All this now, it's clear, is in a country where the crisis is now not only economic, but also political.
Too much to bear. I can't ask for a little bit of food. I can't ask for a job. I want to bring a salary home. I don't want charity. I'm healthy. I can work, and yet I can't work.
The day's headlines were dominated by the latest casualty, Economy Minister Domingo Cavallo. Yesterday's political shooting star became the latest victim of the public anger. But his resignation did little to calm the situation. Indeed, the protests have deepened intensely. Demonstrators drum outside the presidential palace, yet another vocal protest in the streets of Buenos Aires. But the Casa Rosada is deserted. What's left of the government is elsewhere. Its message to the demonstrators is that more austerity measures are the only option.
Which are becoming more and more violent. Indeed, events here are developing very, very, very quickly. After President de la Rúa's speech calling for a government of national unity, the opposition Justicialista party has rejected his call. This puts the country in an even more precarious political position, and there is strong speculation that the president, in a speech he is expected to give in just a couple of more hours, will be forced to resign. In fact, there are members of the opposition party who are calling for his impeachment. So the plan that he had to bring an end to what is called here the lack of governability of this country by putting together all the different political forces in a government of national unity is apparently a plan that will not be able to work, and he will be unable to pull off. In fact, there are reports on some news agencies already that President de la Rúa has resigned and that he will be addressing the nation in 2 hours and 20 minutes, we understand, to make his resignation formal. Juanita?
Yes, Lucia, you mentioned there that it's already being reported. We have here a wire from the Reuters news agency saying that Argentinian President de la Rúa has resigned, but we have no independent confirmation of that yet. Lucia, just give us some idea, why did the opposition reject the plan that he put forward to save the country from this crisis?
Well, he obviously wanted to share the burden and the responsibility of trying to put this country back together again. But the Justicialista party sees this as its opportunity to now regain power, which it lost 2 years ago in a humiliating electoral defeat. Now, this puts the country in a very, very precarious position, though. The opposition party itself, that the main opposition party that was led before by now disgraced President Carlos Menem, is in many pieces. It's very divided. And so they're going to have to put together some kind of a coalition even amongst themselves if they are to take this country out of the tremendous political and economic crisis that it's in right now.